Yes. Welcome everyone to our Redesigning Suicide Prevention Lunch and Learn. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm excited that you're all here. My name is Basha Starr, and I work for Crisis Support Services of Alameda County. I'm joined here with Nenna Joiner, who I'll introduce in just a moment. And as we are um, settling ourselves in this space of our Lunch and Learn, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we are on. CSS is on Chochenyo Ohlone territory. I am currently on Plains Miwok territory. People are welcome to list where they are at in the chat if they would choose to do so. I would like to acknowledge the land that we are on, to acknowledge the custodians of these lands that we are all on, past, present, and future. I would also like to acknowledge that this country that we live on was built on stolen and unacknowledged labor of Black and Indigenous and Brown people, and continues to benefit from stolen labor of Black and Brown people. And in this acknowledgement is the desire to push against the erasure of these happenings, the erasure of these lands being stolen, the erasure of the people of these lands, and the erasure of how we have been able to come to the place we are today with the labor that was put into this country. So welcome everyone here to our Lunch and Learn. Next slide. Yes, CSS's mission is to provide a welcoming and safe environment rooted in the belief that through collaboration with clients at every stage of service, healing is possible. Our values are that we care from the inside out. With open hearts and minds, we build connections and remain committed to growth to be the best for the people we serve. Our strategic plan to reduce barriers and stigma to receiving services. Yes, there are many services that we provide at CSS. Of course, there is our 24-hour crisis line, our crisis support services. We provide community education in the world in schools and with different organizations. We also provide therapy services for elderly folks and people who are experiencing grief due to the loss of a person important to them. Yeah, thank you. We utilize the socio-ecological framework and acknowledge that suicide prevention is not the work of the individual. We're situated in our society, our community, our relationships, and individually in ourselves, and all of these things are impacting and contributing to the wellness of any single being. And that is how we are, that is a frame that we use when we are doing the work that we do as a crisis support services agency. Here, I think Nargis put into the chat already all of the different programming that we'll be having for our upcoming Lunch and Learns. We've got some Lunch and Learns through May. I think we're still reaching out to folks and organizing other ones. So continue to look to that space because we will have more and more. And feel free to sign up for the ones that we already have. It's just so exciting to have folks coming and be in this space of redefining what suicide prevention can be. So continue to come. We're so grateful to have you all. And I would now like to introduce Nenna Joiner, who is the founder and owner of Feelmore Gallery in Oakland. Nenna, would you like to introduce yourself to the lovely folks here?
Hey guys, my name is Nenna Joiner. I started Feelmore. I started the store 13 years ago, but I was actually working out of my trunk and doing events in the community. And I've been on this journey of, it's not just been for me, it's not for others, it's really for me and the healing that I needed to take place in my life. And so I was like, what better way to heal than to heal through community with other people? And how do you create a space that people can heal through community? You have to create that space that and create a space that they can heal, so they can heal. I know it didn't sound right, but what I meant to say with that was, when you have the intention set around the space, people come, as you can see right now. And you're setting your intentions on how you want things to go. And that's what we've done here as a team. The vision of it has been perfect for keeping us all safe, also working through our own trauma, but also being there for others as they work through not only just their trauma, but also buying things to bring pleasure about. So.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you for that. And I know I said it earlier when we were just getting onto the Zoom, but I just so much appreciate your enthusiastic yes to being in this conversation with us here at CSS, and like bridging the conversations around sex, sexuality, pleasure to this work. And that is part of my first question that I have for you. The question is, what inspires you to work with people around pleasure and sexuality?
All right, I turned off a bell. So repeat that question.
The question is, what inspires you to work with people around pleasure and sexuality?
Oh, wow. Again, I think it's just been from my own trauma as a kid. You know, I experienced a lot of trauma. One time is still a lot. But I experienced a lot of trauma, and I was like, you know what, if others can't heal me, maybe I can heal me. And that was a part of me to go searching and looking for what makes me come alive, and also what makes me afraid. And so I started on this journey, this self journey. I'm from Las Vegas originally. So in Vegas, people think of sex, that it's happening everywhere, and the showgirls, this, that, and the other. But it wasn't in my community. You have smaller communities, ethnic communities, that just don't engage with the strip. But when I came here we had a lot of prostitution. That's what I did have access to. But when I came here to the Bay Area, the first book I got was Our Body, Ourselves, which is a Good Vibrations book. And that's a beautiful book. And I got an opportunity to see that in my aunt's kitchen, who was actually doing a lot of sex education and also ISM work in search of multicultural solutions through diversity training. She was doing early DEI work, and also doing a lot of work around AIDS and HIV. And she worked at UCSF, where the AIDS Health Foundation was there. I went over to a room over here at one of the conference center at one of the health agencies. Her name is on the room, and I didn't know it. So when I walked in there, I was just like, oh my God, this is the work that I should be doing. And so just knowing that, hugging someone, touching someone can really transform their lives. And, on a day-to-day, every day, day in and day out, I'm challenged with people who might look like my aggressors, and also loving them and loving myself, and knowing that everybody is not there to hurt me, and wanting to break those childhood traumas as an adult. This space has given me the opportunity for the last 13 years.
Thank you, Nina. The next question you're also speaking to in all of the ways you're connecting your work. And the question is, what is your philosophy around healing, and how does it connect to your work? And I wonder if you want to dive even deeper into your philosophies around healing. And
so my philosophies for healing is to basically just love, just play. I would say more play, because love is really hard, right? As I got older, the song from Tina Turner hits on me, like, what love got to do with it, right? And you're like, well, wait a minute. You got to love it. No, you don't. But what I do is play a lot. and get to be that playful individual that gets to experience different types of emotions on different levels. And that's the way I really connect with myself and my community, because a lot of people don't, it's hard in some cities, especially around here right now. It's hard to get a smile or get close to people. And how are you to heal if you can't touch people, if you can't touch them through how you present? And it's not just the fingertips, it's also the smiles and what flows through what you're saying for the other person to receive and hear. And being in the community so long, I'm in downtown Oakland with this business, and I used to work at Clorox. So I worked at Clorox. I've been downtown a long time. So this is like my backyard. And then I started a business not too far. Now I'm starting a bar across the street, not too far, 2-minute walk. And it's about your neighbors. For me, it's just finding joy in just being alive, really.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking to your philosophy and the many different ways that you can be in like impact and connection with the people around you. You spoke a little bit about like when one sits in a historic experience of trauma and even your own space of trauma. And the next question is, we believe that the personal informs the professional and centered lived experience as our guide. As an agency, we are centering lived experience as our guide. And how does your lived experience guide your purpose and your values?
When I was a kid, I always wanted to be in business. My grandparents owned grocery stores. So for me, it was like, I would go and do my own thing and pretend I had my own store and run the store at times. And connect that with my trauma, connect that with what would bring me joy. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, and there was always this turmoil or trauma that they wanted you to take on to make them feel as though you're working on the solution. And I remember when we got outsourced, I went to another company where some people I worked with at Clorox were there. So it was going to be easy for me to get the job. And I pulled up to the parking lot. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I've learned to live outside of space and walls, and to still do the same thing. I think about Jesus, right? I think about Jesus, my partner and I were talking about, which is like, well, Jesus, it took 13 years for Jesus to do something. I was like, his mission was to go and spread the gospel, whatever that would be, right? And what I noticed about that story was he did everything outside in nature. And for myself to be able to go outside and still be productive lets me know I don't need to be inside. I get to see people, like for us right now, it's 18 and older in here. If I want to see kids, I gotta go outside. And so I find that my personal is the trauma as a kid, that's that story, but I stopped telling myself that narrative and told myself I was going to rebirth myself into what I really wanted to, with the skill sets that I really wanted as an adult if I were a parent for myself. I want my child to be kind, I want to be brilliant, whatever that means. I want them to be respectful, and also want them to be self-sufficient and love what they do. And so right now in my life, it's about doing all of those things in a non-office setting, in a non-traumatic setting, and living my whole experience just outside and experiencing every color that the world has. And I just got back from Vietnam. Like, I want to live outside. I was just talking about my visa for Shanghai. I want to live outside. And it's not so much as outside physically, it's also outside the body, really looking at myself and saying, is that what you really want to do? How do you look? How do you feel doing that, what you're really doing right now? Is that really going to bring you joy? And talking to myself that way, and finding the flow, and finding this parent inside of myself that says, look, we want to experience joy at every turn. It's not a joy to take away or hamper the structure for other people, but it's to uplift and to nurture and to condition yourself that you can do more. I can do more. And so just because I had those traumatic stories doesn't mean that's who I am at this point in time. And it's only if I take those tools of survival as a child, if I apply them right now, they may not work. They may work, but they may not be beneficial. And so finding new tools to experience life as well.
Thank you, Nenna. Thank you also so much for speaking to like the richness of joy, like our internal joys, but also this external joy and what it means to be like, what I heard you saying is like, be in the world, you know what I mean? Be in the world and receiving the joy from the being in the world.
Yeah.
And the next question is, pleasure is so interlaced when we are thinking about things like connecting, healing, sustaining, and liberating. How do you connect sexual pleasure with suicide prevention? What joys can you share with us in terms of how we can be in the experience of this joy and connectivity?
Well, when you guys reached out, I gotta be honest with you, like it's really difficult to talk about suicide. Suicide is, it's not an easy flavor to taste because there are so many levels of it to whatever the textbook says, whatever you're really feeling, depending on your age, depending on your ethnicity, depending on your gender. Like there's just so much. And I was like, how do I not offend people? Right. And and I was like, this is, y'all got me really like, this is out of all the talks I've done, that question is really charged and it can hurt a lot of people. And that's what I don't want to do. So if I do say something that is not for you, please let me know. But I will speak from my own experience. And I know, Basha, we spoke about this, that I was a person who thought about suicide. And I thought that it was a dirty secret for me. It was like molestation, honestly. It felt like I couldn't tell a damn soul. Like I was going to be considered crazy, that I was going to be ostracized. Who's going to believe me? It still brings like tears in my eyes now. It brought up so much pain. And I was like, well, why are you thinking that way? And my sister, who's sitting back there, I remember I had a relationship at one time and I asked her to stay over with me because I was so afraid of what I might do because of the trauma that I thought I was experiencing. It wasn't just from that person. I had just lost my mother at the same time, like a week before. And I was just like, the world is like caving in on me. Like, what can I do? And what has really changed me from thinking it's a dirty secret to thinking it's the best topic to talk about with those who are ready to talk about it in a non-charged way, is that they told me, you just really want to kill the problem. I was like, is that it? They were like, you don't want to kill yourself. You really just want to kill the problem. And I said, because I as a Black person, we never talked about suicide. Like my grandfather, honestly, I say honestly, but my grandfather committed suicide. I wasn't born yet, so it's my dad's father. And that was the first person. The second person was a cousin, a relative, a friend of mine. He stayed with us and I would see him all the time. And he had this depression talk. We talked to him, then he had a partner and he had a kid. And then one day down here, he lived down here in one of the efficiencies, his family, and they found him dead. He hung himself. And so that story for me, that stays with me, because what he was experiencing, I wasn't experiencing, but it still didn't devalue my feeling of thinking suicide was the option for me. But it was that I just didn't have anybody to talk to about my issue. And I think a lot of circles around suicide prevention can be not just around what's wrong, but, really talking about what's right. And I just found it where it was, I just wanted to kill the problem. And how do I kill the problem? I remove myself, I do certain things, and I don't think about, I don't want to change my life. I don't not want to be here. And so I just wanted to put that out there. But one of the things I experienced with growing up was isolation, a little bullying. I was by myself. I couldn't really talk to people. It was like adults were up here. I'm like, hey, 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 they're not paying attention to me. And so all of that just led me to be by myself, for myself, very hardened for myself, and going through this life. And it was really when I came to the Bay Area, met my aunt, and I was able to talk to somebody about what I was feeling, and them have context and words that made me feel powerful and made me feel as though someone was really listening, really kind of transitioned my life. And it was around my body. And because I had been silent so much around my body, I wanted to kill that problem. So maybe the things that I was doing in my life was also killing myself. And not so much as physically, but metaphorically, that, the trauma that I was experiencing, or the drugs or the alcohol, even though I didn't do those things, or for me, it was probably more love, going after wrong relationships. And so it's, when I thought about the suicide and the pleasure and how can that connect, it's like, you have to be very careful, because a lot of times some of the trauma around suicide is connected to people and them telling us that they love us and not showing the proper respect, or what we think is respect. And because there's so many intersects, what is respect? But when I started thinking about this, I said, well, let me come from this from a unique, but also caring, and also a playful experience. One of the things is a lot of people don't get intimacy. And what's the safest, consensual, most consensual, easiest consensual thing I can think of besides sex, which is not easy, and but it is cuddling. I did San Francisco sex information, and I had a lot of friends. It was training. We had a lot of sex education training, and a couple of friends of mine were in there. They were actually doing cuddle parties, and it was the first time I thought about releasing and being safe and being heard and being that intimate with that troubled self of suicide, where I can ask for a hug from a stranger, not from who I know, but from a stranger, for them to say, I see you, I feel you, to feel a breath, to feel a hug, but also to ask someone to ask me, is it okay? Like, sometimes it's just not okay for it to be touched, or not even physically touched, but spiritually or mentally touched. Like, I'm not giving you permission to do that. But when someone is sitting there in this warm room, not just with temperature, but with energy and spirit and kindness and intention, and someone says to me, can I touch you? Can I hold you? Like, for me, it releases all of those things that we talk about with serotonin. It releases all of the endorphins you need to really feel much, much better about yourself. It's almost better than coffee, to really pick ourselves up and to experience something different. So through San Francisco sex information, I've taught adults who were older adults, but their mental was more like 16, and they were like 40, 50, and 60. And our agency went in there and they wanted to talk about the ins and the outs of sex. And I was like, oh, I'm not feeling that. Like, because as a kid, I got so much trauma around the ins and the outs. And because I wasn't able to understand what was love, what was intimacy, what was consent. And for me, it's starting there. If I can get someone to say, and this woman says to me, she says, well, what is love? I say, wow, there we go. That's the best question. Is it okay for someone to touch me? Because when it's not, it brings all of these unwanted traumas that live with us longer than the problem does, that we hold, and the weight of it right there crushes us. And that's what I didn't want for myself. So I created a space that I felt that other people could come in and let go of some of that hurts and that crushing that the world does. Like, in this one place, that means police, that means ambulance, that means anybody who has a heart and a breath can come here and feel confident and comfortable to be seen, and to allow and to allow and have a place where people can actually receive that weight and tell them it's not that bad. Not that it's not bad, it's not that bad. It's not that bad where they may want to disconnect from life, or they want to change, they want to kill the problem, to give it to them in that context. Because if I can share myself and the trauma that I've been through, and I've been through, I know we all these boxes up here have been through trauma, but I know for sure my trauma, oh my God, I should have been killed myself, and I didn't. So I know that there's a purpose for me to be here, and in doing, in living, and every day seeing a person who had looks like the aggressor for me to get through that, and like, it's not them. That's not them. And treat them with kindness. Like, I let go of a lot of those crushing feelings that I've had for myself, even when thinking about suicide before I really understood what suicide was about.
Thank you, Nina, and thank you for for sharing so vulnerably about yourself and your stories. Also, the tenderness that you have with linking these conversations that both in their own ways can be really, really tricky to talk about. I love this idea of like the flavor of suicide. I was like, oh yeah, no, it's a flavor. It has a definite taste. And like also in this moment, bridging that gap of like of talking about it, of saying it out loud, so that we can be in the practice of like, how do we have these conversations? How can we get used to like this languaging and working inside of our mouths so that we can speak to the places of where we can move towards transformation and move towards the places of being in connection, and then further out, even being in our own joys. So I appreciate you working that magic out loud. Can you speak to how you connect to the community in this work? Can you speak to how your connections to the community in this work inspires and sustains you? And I feel like I've heard you saying a lot of the pieces around this, but I'm wondering if there's any more you want to speak to.
I would just say it's not just like sex community or Black and brown community. It's like, I'm in Oakland. Like, this is the melting pot, one of America's best melting pots. But it's also to be in other communities. You know, one of the things with sex toys, selling sex toys, is that you think it's just about the body, but it's also about the culture. And sitting with people to find out who they are, why they are. For example, one of my best places I love, and I'll tell my partner this morning I'm homesick, is Vietnam. Like, I've been to Vietnam a lot of times, and she's like, every time you come back, you love me differently. And that's because I get to see the context of her indigenous nature in its actual form, rare, not through the trauma of leaving the country because of war and coming to displaced to another country, and loving me based on those pretenses of war and trauma and pain, and connecting here, how we connect, but there where it's joy, is people who want to be in their country and able to work, and older people able to own, and younger people are able, young kids, like I hear kids all the time there. And so love there is totally different than love here for me. But to see her and to be able to see her mother and her father differently, it gives me that joy. And I think, you know, the connecting isn't just, you know, a lot of people will hit us up and like, hey, can you come talk and table for sex toys? I'm like, yeah, that's not fun. That's not fun. What's fun is really learning about the crisis in communities, and how love can actually, you know, having different things and joy can actually transform the communities, because that's all we have really right now. And so for us, it's, for me, the best is to talk to healthcare professionals like yourselves, healthcare communities, but it's also to talk to kids. You know, when I get to talk to kids, and I also, a couple weekends from now, I'll actually be talking to disabled adults about vibrators. Like, that for me is like, sign me up all day. But the ones who just want to talk about sex and all, I don't want to talk about that, because you get it. It's like preaching to the choir. But there are some people who really need that foundation before they get to that middle of being able to enjoy it. Like, yeah, like, hey, let's go have sex. My partner's right here, but can I have sex with you? Like, can I have sex with you? Is it consensual? It means nothing, but it's consensual. Like, how do, when we finally get there, what do we have to go through to get to that point? To really respect consent, respect those relationships, make it meaningful or non-meaningful. There's the child patterns, and it's also some of those traumatic, those living with disability, you know, and making sure, and then the older people, you know, making sure that that ecosystem is really met. I do a lot of talks with elderlies in facilities, you know, nursing homes, talking to them about it, because there is something, for me, there's something in there for me. It's like still revisiting children, thinking about being an older person and having sex. I had this one lady who used to come in, she was at least 70. She would come in every Sunday and get like 4 bottles of lube. I'm like, how are you using this lube? And it's flavored lube. I don't know what she was doing, but she was coming every day. And now that she doesn't come, my mind is, has she passed away? And so it's like seeing in the body, if something happens to the body as you get older and you can't use it anymore, how are you experiencing love? What does that look like in that connection? And so for me, it's about connecting with all the parts that society say don't work. Because then something happens, I'm not in this trauma mode of, I don't want to be here, or I can't find my right person, because I have my right thinking about the transitions of my body and also myself in different aspects and different phases in life.
Nenna, I want to thank you so much for your very rich commitment to being in the community in many, many different ways. And I just want to say that out loud. Thank you for holding the work that you do in such a vastness, and for honoring us by speaking about all of its layers. I wonder if before we open it up to questions from folks in the gallery audience, sometimes I call it a video game, but are there any last words or thoughts that you would like to share with the group around what this work means to you?
I would say it just means that the person who is doing it is also healed at the same time. We're going through continuous healing for themselves, because I don't think you can effectuate change unless you're really changing yourself. Like, people don't just come here to buy the product. That's the easy part. But how are we allowing our teammates to change and to be vulnerable and work through their stuff here as well? If I'm not still working through my stuff, I don't think it wouldn't mean much to me. And so I would say, you know, preface to the community, like, as you guys are also doing this stuff, like, just continue to work on your own self and continue to heal yourself so that you can be people can feel that energy in your intention. So, yeah.
Thank you, Nenna. And I'll also say in the chats, people are just really, really appreciating you, appreciating what you're saying and speaking to, appreciating your vulnerable shares. And feeling the power of what you are bringing forward today. So wanting to shout out all of the chats of thank yous to you. People are, oh yes, you can also, I'll do this sharing. You can also just put that in the chat. Do you want to?
Can I do that? I was
do
trying.
it. Yes.
I was
Put it
trying.
to every single pony in the room.
I see
Wonderful.
everyone. That's the thing. Let's see.
Oh, I
there it is. I see it. I see now.
do that. Okay, great. Wonderful. Yes, please let people know where they can go to be engaging and be in community. I want to open the space up to folks in the audience. Ed, I see a hand raised.
So I just want to say that was very powerful, what you're saying, and you know, you really spoke your truth. And I had just a question, just in terms of what you were mentioning earlier about, you know, how you didn't feel like you had anyone to open up to. And when you found somebody to open up to, it helps you, to feel more well and to not, consider taking your life. Because I know you were saying earlier you felt that way, but I just had a question. Something was standing out when you were saying that you have gone through a lot of trauma, and what you would say, like specifically, like if someone does have like trauma, like how you would like support them. Because I think that everything you're saying is healing, but just a little bit more about that. I just had a question on that.
So your question is, how would I repeat the question for me?
Oh, because like, the different things you're talking about, like finding someone to talk to, and having a partner and whatnot has helped like liberate you and help you become, more well and whatnot. But when you were mentioning about different people having trauma and whatnot, like, and you were saying that, it's bad, but not that bad. Like, I was just curious as some ways that you would like support someone if they are having suicidal thoughts. Or
Yeah, that's one. I would definitely tell them to talk to their professional, because I think you need to have that 24/7 support from your professional. Because, the average person is the average person, but we all are practitioners. And if someone is having that, if they feel confident enough to come to me, I'm very honored in that. And I would just sit with them. Listening has been hard, has been a challenge, but I've learned to do that a lot better. And I would definitely get them the resources they need, depending on what their issue is. The other day I was in the airport. Now, I don't know if he was crying because all the flights got canceled that day, but this young man was crying, and he was a Black young man. And for him to cry was like, I was like, well, is that the baby next to me? And it was him. And so that brought up for me, what is it like for a young Black man to cry? Can he cry? I mean, he was crying, but was he really crying? Like, he needed a hug. So all I could do was, I got some pizza, and that's too many calories for me, right? So I brought him some food back, and I was like, no, you're gonna eat this. And so I think how we're there for someone is not just in a let me sit here and talk to you, but it's just showing up to see them sometimes, and keep checking on them. To say, how you doing today? Did you get out? Come on, come walk with me. And hopefully you get through to them. And sometimes you may not. And sometimes you might find yourself guilty. And I think it's up to the practitioner who is healthy to also maintain their healthy relationship with the practitioner that can help and support them, especially if they don't get through to the person who has, suicidal thoughts or tendencies.
Thank you, Nenna, for your share. Also, Nargis has put in our info about our hotline. So if somebody is coming to you and presenting as having thoughts of suicide, we are the Crisis Support Agency of Alameda County. You can definitely refer them to us. And we also do work in the world where we provide community education. And so there's a link in the chat around that. Kaylin, I hope I said your name right.
You did, thank you. Hi, Nenna. I'm wondering if you can maybe speak a little bit about any like testimonies or instances, or just any experience you might have with like kink and BDSM, and how that can be, or have you seen it be like healing for people?
I think kink and BDSM community. So if we think about sex is this big, you got asexual, let's not forget that, right? Asexual, you got sex, which takes up the most space, and you got kink over here, right? You got a little bit of this, the window is like a little bit of asexual, a lot of sex, and then kink and BDSM. I think kink and BDSM is a very great community for those who have had, and I think that's a very just hear me out when I say this. It's very white nomenclature. I think, you know, the kink and BDSM words need to change to be very inclusive, because it's just hella old and dated. I'm just be honest with that. Some impact. I just brought up some impact toys, some more. They just have lost their luster. You know what I mean? And people kind of latch onto these words like they're the whole most powerful. Like I'm a dom, I'm a top. I don't care what the hell that means. You just like to experience life. And so I think that sphere really is a beautiful place to be, because as a person who may not drink, may not smoke, it's a very safe place for those to think that they're deviants without having all the trauma stuff that goes along with it. I'm not saying trauma is not there, but I'm saying like addiction. It's a very good space for those because they keep it so clear. They keep the consent, the boundaries so clear. And it's also a place that people are very supportive. Like I have a young man who was brought here to the store by his father. His father passed away, but he was, this young man has, it's like autism, but he's very functioning. And so he's actually delved into not just so much as, I don't want to say just the kink lifestyle, but he's delved into that friend circle because they're very supportive. And I think it can play into those who are looking for belonging, who seem very weird and this doesn't fit me. And it does provide a place that people just love on each other. Like I can't really explain it. Like, I mean, I was saying the other day, you know, you want to put something profound on Facebook as a message. I'm not on Facebook as much as I used to be, but I was like, I was going to ask some people, and I ran for office before, and I was like, well, maybe I should, because it's just me anyway. But I was going to say, have you all been in a room of naked people and you see them, but you don't see them, but they're seen. They feel seen. You know, like going up to someone who's totally naked and like, hey, how you doing? And hugging them and just going on about your business like you went into 7-Eleven, right? Or I've done volunteering at play parties just to take ID, just to clean up. And I think that space really provides a lot of community for those. And I think that that's a certain type of person who understands who they are a little bit more, because it is a very challenging community, because there is no attachment. Like, you know, sex, we talk about it everywhere, television, Instagram, but BDSM, you have to go and find the people, and they're very reserved, they're very professional, they're very clear. But as far as like supporting those who have suicidal, I think the network of people is very strong for someone to talk to. I had, and I've learned how to share because I've been in rooms myself, and my parents are addicts, so I understand how to share. So I can tell you this, there was someone who found out that they had herpes, and that is one of the diseases, the STDs that, or STIs that causes people to really question their lives. You know what I mean? Like, it's over for me. It's like up there with HIV, honestly, you know, at that time. And so the community really supported them. There was no shame. There was no, it was like, this is how we can still play with you safely. And learning about that and supporting them and still including them in everything. So I can see how that ostracization could have put them in a suicidal, you know, mindset. So I saw that myself, you know, and also being around a lot of people who are sex positive. They also understand the heart space and how to care for people. And so even though we talk about, and when you talk about sex, you talk about aftercare, right? After I've flogged you 20 million times, now I'm going to tell you it's okay. I still love you. You're still a great person, right? After all of that pain, right? But this community is so versed in aftercare that they're able to talk about aftercare in the pre-sense. You get what I'm saying? Like, they're able to care for you and really check in with you. And I really love that and admire that about the community.
Thank you for your question, Kaylin, and thank you, Nina. I have a question here in the chat. It says, Can you give advice about solo sex for inexperienced people? I'm a 40-year-old Black, gay, cis woman, but have never dated, partnered, or had sex, and I'm not asexual or aromantic.
Mhm.
It's a major part of my life and a source of despair, and I don't know many places and people who know or have my experience. I recently bought a toy to explore solo sex on my own, but I ended up hurting myself and I want to do better the next time. And then there's another question. Could you share about how to go to the talk for people with disability around vibrators? And then last question, and I'll repeat them if you need me to, Nina. It's also in the chat. Any advice for people who have been alone, have no experience, and want to hire a professional to have sex with? Though I did see a manga about it. Thanks.
Oh, great. This is awesome. This is a great question. I love people who've never touched another person. You're pure. It's very rare. It's very, very rare. And that's a good thing. Like, stop thinking about it as it's not a great thing. And I would say that probably one of the first things, the question I would ask back is, even if you haven't had sex, have you had romantic interest with people? And that would help me to answer this question. But I would honestly say, just go hire a sex professional. Go to a sex party. Let me put that down for you. So for everybody, one, be okay with hiring a sex professional. There are people out there, not just male or female. I would say do both, because you haven't had both. I would say just do it all. You're gonna die anyway. Just do it all. Just experience all the joy. You never know where your joy is coming from, right? And sometimes it might be okay for you to start with same gender, so that you can get an experience of what it's like and what it's not like. And so I would say hire a professional. Two, I would say go to a sex party. Those are my two tops. You know, if you can't find what you want to find, of course, you got to set your budget. You get what you get based on your budget, and there are not a lot of reviews, so just be careful on that. But a sex party for sure. Find one if you can. Even like Kaylin mentioned, if I said it right, Kaylin mentioned kink and BDSM. I think that's a great place to start, because you can also see people being very intimate without having sex per se. Just because you're in a kink party doesn't mean you're gonna see like cock swinging and fluids just flying everywhere. Like, it just don't happen like that. But there are some instances, if permission is given, you can experience that. But then when I say sex parties, I mean people who are there to have sex. People who are in some sex parties aren't as progressive, and I don't mean that that's not a progressive thing, but I'm saying progressive in having safe sex supplies around, having a monitor there, having people who are really checking in on you, and also having, understanding how alcohol and drugs play in, and making sure that they're not around as much, because you want to be able to hear people clearly. And I think that's the main thing. Let me go with what you said. So is this another person who had that question? Okay, no, that was somebody else came. It's something else came. So I just wanted to see if it was that person responding to me. So I would say that those two things would be awesome. Like you can read about it, you can look online. I would say to start with the kink community, who's going to give you more accurate information than the sex community, because they've already been vetted. So I would start at the highest vetting. You can go to FetLife. Get on there, create a profile, connect with people. They have what's called munches. Munches are when people just get together and just connect up. It's not like they're talking about sex. They're just connected up with like-minded people. And you can talk to this community. One of the things I said earlier was I've been in rooms. And what that means is anonymity. Those communities, the kink community is very clear on anonymity. The sex community, I don't know what they're doing. So you got levels and flavors to that. But the kink community is very clear on anonymity. And so I would actually lean on that community to be a resource and also a safe space to ask questions about going forward to get a partner. But you should be great. And then you should also connect with one of your friends who you can ask to do that for you, to experience that with you in a safe space and a non-emotional, because they might say, well, I don't want you to get attached. Just say your sex may not be that good. So, just non-emotional, but you want to experience that with someone who's safe for you. So, all right. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Nina. There was a question about where do we look and find, and you spoke to that just now in like different ways, but I wondered if there were any other places you wanted to lead people to.
Honestly, you're looking for a sex therapist. Some of those sex therapists aren't just talkers, but they're also doers. So they're going to help you. Another one is very expensive. A friend of mine, I've done this one before, but it's called oming. Oming is in a collective sense. They charge you a lot, but it's more for women. And it's freer for women. So if you can find it around here anymore, that's a really good one. So if someone has OM in their background, OM therapy or OM connections, like they're going to get the sex positive community I would really want you to go for. But I would say, just pull up your phone, pull up your sex therapist, and I think that's going to be good yield. Those people there, you're going to see a lot of reviews there, and then you can ask them, where can I have someone to help me with this? And there are some professionals out there that will, and I say sit with you, but I mean lay with you.
Thank you, Nina. I see another hand raised, Maya, and you may be our last question for the day because we only have 4 more minutes left.
Well, I want to first of all just say this is really beautiful, and I've never seen a talk around sex and sexuality and suicide prevention before. So, just first of all, thank you. I am a domestic violence survivor who fled domestic violence during the pandemic, and I'm also a wheelchair user and non-binary and queer, and was going through a lot of trauma. And when I was in a domestic violence shelter, I went by paratransit to a sex party in the middle of Pride, and I think back on that, you're contextualizing, it really makes sense to me that it was really important for me as someone who was a sexual violence survivor and a physical violence survivor to get back into my pleasure and my joy and to be in a place of consent and, queer yum. And I was wondering whether you have partnered. I was actually asked to be a part of a group called Voices of Alameda County, which is a domestic violence and intimate partner violence and trafficking survivor organization. If you've partnered specifically with folks I know when I fled my home, I had my friends go get my, dildo, at least a couple dildos in my vibrator and things. I didn't know if I've had space in the shelter to be able to actually connect with that, but I knew that at the core, I needed to be connected with my core and with pleasure and passion and power to get through that situation. And I would love, first of all, to talk with you more about, a lot of us lose everything and are incredibly low income. And I haven't been able to afford to buy sex toys, but I've really been wanting to partner with, it's something people don't talk about sex. They talk about housing and, custody rights and all that. But it's
we get a lot of people who come through who have had their cars broken into and things. So we do work with people, but it's still kind of how do you work that out without going too deep into vetting their experience with the moment. But yeah, I mean, I've been DV2 with my mom. We would move a lot. I thought it was kind of fun as a kid because we go out of town, but yeah, it is something that you don't talk about. You don't talk about the intimacy while you're supposed to be healing, when that part is what you do after you heal, right?
Yeah.
You need to be doing that in there as well. And I appreciate you for bringing that up. I think we got one more question.
I don't I'm not sure they have one more question. We only have like maybe like 1 minute and 30 seconds, and I want to.
got one more
I'm not
question.
sure. Oh, we do. We have one more question.
Okay.
Do we? I don't see a hand raised.
No hands?
So anyone have something fast, like a one-word answer question, a yes or
Anybody?
no?
Anybody? Bianca got something over there, huh? Well, it's been great to do this. Thank you for Basha Star, for making this so fabulous and welcoming. And like I said, it's very difficult to talk about, but thank you for having the questions, for putting it together. I thank you for giving me the courage, because I was like, oh my God, this is hard, so yeah.
Thank you for the brilliant way that you have shown up for your community today, for all of us today, for answering all of our questions. I am so grateful. I feel grateful on behalf of the agency to have had this time with you. And there's so many thank yous in the chats, and just deep appreciation for you and your work, and how deeply and richly and vulnerably and caringly you shared with all of us. And again, this place of like where we get to talk about it, where we get to say it out loud so that the flavor can be incorporated into our palettes.
Definitely. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody who was here, who came to attend. So much appreciation. Thank you for coming to our Lunch and Learns. Continue to look to see what we have. We have a lot of other folks in our community speaking. Please continue to join us. Feel also free, Nina, to join us and continue on with Lunch and Learning and other spaces. Thank you all so very much.